I'm Jamie for Guitarist magazine, and today we've got the latest in Boss's Nextone series of amps to show you. So sitting to the side of me here is Boss's Nextone Special, which follows on from the stage and artist models. This one's a little bit different. It's 80 watt, it has its controls on the front panel, and it's a dual channel amp with separate channel strips, if you like, for all the controls for clean and dirty channels. It has a Boss Wazacraft driver, which is designed to replicate the classic Blue Alnico speakers of the 60s, and an absolute host of features which are accessible not only through the front panel but also through the Nextone editor, which is a computer-based app which lets you unlock a myriad of extra tonal controls beyond the front plate of this amp. So let's dive in and take a look at the features of this interesting amp. Before we get started, it's worth stating that despite the classic looks of this amp, it's based on Boss's Tube Logic technology, which is to say it's not a valve amp, but it mimics the behaviour of valve amps down to the component level. It's powered by a DSP, a digital signal processor chip. So it's not a valve amp, but as I say, it emulates valve amps down to the individual component level. And the nice thing about that is it means that with a flick of a switch you can move between different types of amp style very easily, as we'll see. So let's go through this amp section by section, if you like. Here at the input stage, you've got a manual channel selector switch here. So let's just turn the amp up. I'm in the clean channel at the moment. I'm just going to turn that down so we don't get a blast of sound. And there's your lead channel. There's your clean channel again. You can toggle between them with a separately supplied foot switch, but you would have to buy that extra, so that's one thing to be aware of if you're considering this amp. Moving on to the preamp stage, you've got independent and slightly different controls for the clean channel and the lead channel here. Clean channel has a switch for extra headroom, so if you imagine you moved from something like a Fender Deluxe to a Twin, you'd feel that difference in available headroom. This switch aims to offer that, so perhaps we can have a little play with that now. Here's the extra headroom. It's quite kind of subtle, but just gives you a little bit more clarity if you want to have it not break up so quick. There's a channel volume control right here at the start of the chain. On the clean channel, it's just a simple volume control. There's also a tone switch there, which you engage manually. This offers in the clean channel different levels of brightness. So if I just play you a couple of notes without it on. Very subtly different voicing there. You get a little bit more top on that, and again with the Nextone app you can adjust those parameters a little bit more finely. Moving over to the lead channel in preamp stage, we find there's an extra control here for gain. So this is like a sort of preamp gain control you'd find on most modern amps with a drive channel, and you've also got a general volume control for that channel as well. So obviously you can set how hot your lead sounds are there, set the channel overall volume there, and away you go. Okay, moving over to the lead channel, let's just switch to that. You'll see that there are slightly different controls here. There's a kind of preamp gain control as well as a sort of channel volume there as well. So you can set how hot your drive tones are right there at the preamp stage of the amp. In the case of the lead channel, this volume, so this tone switch here does a slightly different thing. Instead of being a brightness control, it's actually a fatness control. So with it switched off, let's get a couple of sounds. Engage that, let's just switch the effects off for a second. Engage that tone switch there, and we get different levels of fatness. Again, a subtle voicing thing. Okay, so let's move on to the EQ stage. As you can see, there's a simple 3-band EQ for both the clean and lead channels here. There's also another switch which is quite interesting. That switches you between American style voicing and British style voicing. So if we think about American amps, you know, the classic Fender amps of the 50s and 60s, nice sparkling top end, a lot of bottom end as well, but a slight scoop in the mids. The British amps of the same era, 60s going into 70s, a bit more mids, slightly. It's basically a sort of a difference in overall voicing that we're all familiar with from classic records. So that switch is designed to let you toggle between those two EQ styles. One thing worth noting is that if you use the Nextone editor, whilst there's only three-band EQ on the front plate of the amp, using the Nextone editor will let you unlock 4-band EQ with a dual parametric control for mids, for example, or indeed use an 11-band graphic EQ to dial in the tones you're getting on presets on this to exactly to your liking. So again, the Nextone editor really does sort of lift the lid on more possibilities with this amp. Before we move on, I'll just show you the difference between that American and British voicing. So we've currently got the British voicing selected. Switching to American voicing. Hearing that slight mid scoop come in there even on those driven sounds. Moving on, we're coming to the effects section. Now the effects section is labelled up as with 3 controls governing boost, delay and reverb. But as always with this amp, there's more beneath the hood when you use the Nextone editor app. The boost is not a sort of fixed effect. You can actually choose between 11 different boosts using the Nextone editor app. You can just assign one to it. Some are the classic clean boosts. Some are more like kind of drive pedals that you would have been familiar with. You know, certain green drive pedals and all the way up to metal focused gain pedals are all kind of accessible via the Nextone editor app, and it can be assigned to that boost. So you just choose the flavour you want and you leave that on the amp until next time you want to change it using the Nextone editor. There's a delay dial here. Again, you've got multiple delay models that you can choose from on the Nextone editor app and assign one to this. Everything from tape delays to bucket brigade delays, that sort of thing, and some greatest hits from Boss's own back catalogue over the years. So again, you choose the one that you want on there. The other thing that on the clean channel you can assign to this delay dial is actually what we have here, which is a tremolo. So although it's labelled up as delay, again, bear in mind the Nextone editor app opens up many more possibilities. So at the moment we've got tremolo on that dial for here, which you'll hear in some of the music segments we've been playing. Coming to the reverb, there are 3 reverb types: the spring, hall and plate. Their fine detail of how they work can again be accessed via the Nextone editor app. So there's like pre-delay, all of the usual controls you'd find on the front panel of a dedicated reverb plugin you can get at via the Nextone editor, or you can just use, in a kind of general sense, using these controls on the amp as you're going along in a more simple way. Next we come to perhaps the most interesting part of the amp, which is the power amp stage. There's quite a lot going on here. As mentioned, Boss's Tube Logic technology lets you switch between the characteristics of various classic valve amps, and here in the power stage that means you can switch between emulations of different power valve types. And as we all know, an amp which is powered by EL84s has different characteristics and voicing to an amp which is powered by 6L6s, for example. They all have their own flavour that we know and love, and this amp, one of the beauties of the Tube Logic is you can just switch between them. So we're going to have a little go at that now. I'm in the drive channel at the moment, and we've currently got the EL34 setting selected, so let's just hear that. If I move to EL84, a little bit brighter and tighter, a little bit less full. This is 6L6. And then finally 6V6, which is the lower powered of the US power valves that you'll be familiar with. So again, you're finding things like headroom are subtly affected, things like the kind of the way that it breaks up. all slightly different in each case, as you'd expect for something that's emulating different types of power valve. As you can see, there are some other different controls here. This custom tone section here is quite interesting. It basically lets you EQ the power section, if you like. This is something you wouldn't necessarily get with conventional valve amps. Basically, you can, even though you can EQ the amp here, the preamp stage, you can also sculpt the kind of the way that the power amp responds in the sense of EQ. So again, you can use it to just finely sculpt the amount of bass and the amount of treble response that you're getting from the amp in each of the channels. So as you switch between them, you can set up totally different settings on each one, and it will just hop between them as you switch channels, which can be quite handy. And again, you can have separate power valve settings on the clean channel to what you have on the lead channel. So it gives you two completely different sound worlds, if you like, that you can just toggle between. Okay, so moving to the sort of master section of the amp here, you've basically got another channel volume here, an overall channel volume for both clean and lead. So again, that helps you dial in the sort of gain and headroom characteristics of the amp. You've got a master volume, which is for everything, obviously raises and lowers the relative settings of everything. So you've also got a power control here, and this is very much like an attenuator on a valve amp. So if you're playing in the bedroom and you want to keep everything quiet but have the amp running, you know, in its preamp stages and power amp, you know, effectively flat out for juicy tones, this will keep this power control keeps things in a certain sort of overall output range. It goes from max to 60 watt to 40 watt to 20 watt to 0.5 watt. So that gives you plenty of options. The tone setting buttons will let you access pre-selected setups of the whole amp very rapidly, so you can sort of quickly jump to favourites. And the last thing is just the power buttons on the front there, so nice and convenient to turn the amp on and off. So there we have it, the Boss Nextone Special, a highly versatile amp, probably a lifetime's worth of tone tweaking possible on this amp, and it retails for about £800, so you're getting an awful lot of bang for your buck. And if you're thinking of making the switch from valves to modelling or non-valve emulation amp, this is definitely worthy of your attention.